All right, we are recording. This is Jake Sukoff with Uppercase Brands. We are recording uh, DTC WTF, the podcast and web show that covers successful direct-to-consumer founders and the biggest mistakes that they make and how they overcame them. Today, my guest is Justin Wiesehan from Macro Snacks. Justin, it is wonderful to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Jake, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you and kind of sharing some insights.
Very excited to learn more about you and your journey in this company. So I'd love to just get started with give me a little brief overview about who you are and Macro Snacks and how you came to found it.
Yeah, so Justin Wiesehan, I have a pretty extensive background in retail, CPG. It's basically where I spent my whole career over the last 12 years. Um, Originally, I spent time in the electronic cigarette and vape industry, founded a company there and did that for about 7 years and left that company in 2017. Not really sure where I wanted to go from that point. So I did some consulting in that industry, but always had this idea of a healthier chip in the back of my mind, and just never really uh, decided to go for it until 2018. Um, I had this idea for a high protein chip, being, pretty active with my fitness and my health. Chips were my big weakness. Doritos, Cheetos, Lay's, whatever,
Oh yeah,
whatever
you're
it
speaking
was.
my language now.
Yeah, I mean, they were my weakness, and they always seemed to throw me off of the numbers that I was trying to hit from a nutritional perspective, in my diet and my workout regimen. So, I went online, tried to find some type of product that would work. So of course I tried all the brands that are out there that we all know. I won't name them because I just won't. um, None of them really satisfied that crunch or that taste that I was looking for in a healthier snack. We see a lot of consumers, kind of go off on a tangent here a little bit, but they try healthy snacks, they're not good, so then they stop eating healthy snacks or trying different types of brands that might taste better. So my mission really was to create a snack that first of all tasted really good,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's get the taste where it needs to be, then we can work on the nutritionals, where I think people kind of do that in reverse, right? They focus on the nutritionals and the taste just is what it is, and they think they have to accept it. um, so I went the other route. I decided that taste was going to be top of mind, and then we'll fit the nutritionals in second. And so that's kind of how Macro Snacks was born. We founded our nutritional profile based off of a balanced macronutrient formulation. So that's a healthy blend of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats.
Mm.
So our chips have about 11 to 12 grams of protein, 15 to 17 grams of carbs, and 3.5 to 4 grams of fat. And that's pretty much a balanced macronutrient profile. So really that was the whole mission behind the company is, there's got to be a way to make these healthy, better for you protein snacks to actually taste good and want you to come back and buy some more. So, in 2018, I reached out to a couple food development companies that I found on Google. I have no food industry experience, no food industry background. So found some companies on Google, talked to a bunch of them, honed in on one, and they sort of helped me through the research and development of the ingredient sourcing, the manufacturing, and kind of get everything in line to get to a point where we have a formulation that we can then go try to make.
Mm. That's definitely something I want to dig into a bit more later in the interview because I'm very curious. That was going to be one of my follow-up questions is whether is this your first company that you started and have you worked in the food industry before? So you already answered you haven't worked in the food industry. Was this your first company that you started?
No, so the electronic cigarette company we started from scratch.
Mm.
Back in 2010, we started that company and we ran it for about 7 years.
Wow, great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a bit about the snacks and food industry because I'm really curious about somebody with no experience in that realm and getting up and running. I imagine food production has huge risks, huge challenges. Can you talk to me a little bit about what it was like starting with what you just talked about, finding that partner that helped get you started and then getting into the R&D and formulation and manufacturing, packaging, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, I think going in a little bit naive helped because I
Mm.
wasn't afraid to ask questions because I didn't know anything. So that was important. I wasn't afraid to ask questions. I wasn't afraid to tell people I had no idea what I was doing. I had this idea for a product and I wanted to see if we could get it to work. So I mean, when you talk about the R&D, coming from an industry that R&D doesn't take too long, this took a long time. I started the process in April of 2018, and we had our first trial run in June of 2019. So that's a big lag of time to kind of formulate, find the right suppliers, find the right production facilities, and it's just a lot more difficult, a lot more moving parts in the food industry than I imagined. Um,
And were you
not
working? You were working full time on that whole year?
I was consulting still in my past industry
Got it.
while running all this. So yeah, from an R&D perspective, like I said, it took a long time to just kind of figure out who we wanted to use, who we were going to get the ingredients from, um, and then sending samples back and forth continuously, trying to get the formulation and the taste to match up to where we wanted it to be.
And so, what's the order of operations there? Do you try to produce something in your kitchen and then send it off to manufacturers to build first? How are you, or you're going to like a food scientist company first to help you build this formulation?
Yeah, so I attempted to make this in my kitchen at first and completely failed. Going to Whole Foods and buying like pea protein isolate and like chickpea flour and trying to get things to go together. And like I said, I had no background, so I didn't know how to mix it. I didn't know, what to use. So yeah, I did. I found a development firm that specializes in food science and ingredient sourcing. And what we did is I told them what I was looking for from a nutritional perspective. I said it had to taste really good, so we needed to use pretty bland ingredients to make the chips, and then find seasoning suppliers that could make really bold, aggressive seasonings.
Mm.
Um, so from there, they went out and sourced a couple different manufacturers for the chip base itself, and then once we kind of tried different forms and factors like whether it's going to be a ball, whether it's going to be a chip, whether it's going to be a puff, we tried all of those things. And then once we honed in on the base that we wanted for the chip, then we sent that base to seasoning manufacturers to then, put your seasoning on it. Let us see how it's applied. Let us see, what the coverage looks like, and then send it back to us so we can taste it to make sure it actually tastes good.
Mm.
So that process took, like I said, that was about a 6 to 8 month process after we got the formulation down in the first 6 months.
So you get the formulation down, you find your partner. Um, how do you then solve the packaging problem? Is that the same partner that does that, or you have to go to another third party to figure that out?
Yeah, so the good thing was the food scientist group that I used in the beginning, from a packaging perspective, are you specifically talking about like getting the nutritionals right on the product and the ingredients and all that kind of stuff, or just like finding a bag?
Yeah, I mean the actual. Is it going to be in a tube? Is it a bag? How are you presenting this to consumers?
Yeah, so I always had the thought that it would be a chip bag, a single serve chip bag. So, we looked at like zip pouches and things like that, but the cost just didn't make sense to do that. And the product that we're trying to replace in people's lives are a bag of unhealthy potato chips.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to be able to replicate that experience as much as possible with the consumer.
Totally. Um, how difficult was it? Was it difficult to navigate with the FDA? What type of insurance did you need? Licenses? What was that like?
Yeah, so the good news is the food science group that I used, they have an FDA compliance person on staff that handles all the FDA stuff for you. So everything from building out nutritional profiles and nutrition labels to ingredient decks and all the compliance that goes with that, they handled that for me. Um, and then from an insurance perspective, it's typical recall insurance, product liability insurance. Again, they put me in touch with somebody that specializes in the food industry to be able to set up a policy that covered us.
I'm sensing a theme here with partners and finding the right partners, and I know that was one of the things that you talked about in the questionnaire that I sent over to you. So, just so important to emphasize how crucial it is to find people who are gonna, help prop you up and bring you through a process, especially as you're a new entrant into this space. So that's
Yeah,
great to
yeah,
hear.
it's super important because as a startup, you have limited capital, you have limited experience. So finding people that will help you, knowing that you don't have a budget like a major food company, you're not going to have minimum order quantities that are going to fill every Whole Foods in the country to start out with. Yeah, that's one of the most crucial parts of the process is finding partners that are willing to work with you with your limited scale and limited budget.
Mm. What else am I missing? What are some other unforeseen challenges that you had to put up with specifically towards manufacturing a new food item?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing you learn pretty quickly is that samples that you get from a supplier that are made by hand are not necessarily what's going to happen on a mass scale production run.
Hmm.
So we went up to the manufacturer in April of 2019 and had the product samples and good. This is the product. This is what we're going with. We get up there to run it, and it just comes off the line, and it's horrible. Like I wouldn't even give it to people in prison to eat. I mean, it was hard as a rock. The seasoning wasn't coated. It was dry. It just, it got to the point throughout the day we made about 1,200 pounds of this stuff, and it's just coming out and coming out, and all I'm seeing are dollar signs going out the door, right? But it's one of those things where it's that WTF moment, like, oh my gosh, what did I just get myself into? Like,
Yep.
this is ridiculous. How am I going to fix this? These are supposed to be the people that I trusted to help me do this the right way. And it was just horrible. I remember going back to my hotel room that night, calling my wife and saying, I don't know if we're going to do this anymore. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know who to call to fix this. And the product is terrible.
So walk me through that a little bit more. That sounds like an absolute nightmare. So you've been for now over a year. You're working with this partner to build out what you expect to be the final product, the one that's going to start to go into bags and hit shelves soon. And what is the reason that the final product that you got was so different from the samples that you've been working with your partner up to that point?
Yeah, so I think the main difference, like I kind of mentioned, is that the samples are made in small batches by hand, right?
Mm.
So they, manufacturers are good and partners are good, but they're also trying to get your business, right? So when they make a sample, they want to send you the best possible thing that they have from a production standpoint so that you're like, yep, this is good. This is what I'm going with. Then you find out later that, oh, well, making 6,000 pounds is a lot different because of speed and time and all that stuff to do it at a mass scale. It just creates a different type of product environment, I guess I would call it. The product ends up being in a different environment. It's faster. And that's the main difference. I mean, it's spitting out, 600 pounds an hour versus them just making a batch by hand to send you a sample. And I guess that got lost in translation. So I'm sitting there with the manufacturer on the floor and I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? I said, we just stop, like cut it off, cut the machine off. We're not doing it anymore. This isn't the product that I can sell to people. Just stop. Let's regroup. So being a great partner, we regrouped in the morning. We kind of went through some different ingredients that we could use so I was explaining to him what I wanted the product to be like. I want it like the samples. He's like, well, it's not always going to come out that way. So what do you want? And I said, well, it needs to be a little bit softer because it's really, really hard. It needs to be a little bit more airy because there's no puff to the base. And then on the seasoning side, it just came off really, really wet and soggy. We need to get it more powdery, like a Cheeto. Like it needs, all these things need to be fixed in the process.
You definitely don't want a soggy chip. That sounds like a horrible snacking experience.
No, well, it got wet and then we would dry it again, so it went through the oven twice. So that's why it was hard because it was baked twice. And then the seasoning's wet when it's going in the oven, so then it was caked on there, kind of like goop. So we sat down the next morning for a couple hours and we went through some different ingredients we could try that he thankfully is a large manufacturer. He has things on hand that, he could use and try different things. So we did, we updated some of the ingredients. We took some pea protein out. We added some soy protein in. We added some tapioca starch to make it a little bit softer, and we upped the chickpea powder. So, we solved the problem after a very restless night's sleep on my end. But and then we changed some instruments in the seasoning applicator, which made a world of difference. So it's just it's one of those things where it's a learning on the job type experience, and you never really know until you start it, right? And that's one of the biggest things is you can think and you can try samples and you can try to understand what's happening, but until you get in it and get in the weeds, you don't really know how it's going to come out, and then you have to adjust. And I think that's the biggest thing from a founder's perspective is you got to be willing to adapt, you got to be willing to adjust, and nothing's ever going to go like you think it's going to go.
Totally. Yeah, that flexibility is so crucial in being an early stage company, especially an initial product run. I can't imagine how much stress is going into that to begin, and then to have something like this happen on your very first run. It's got to be heartbreaking. So walk me through this now. So you have gotten however many hundreds of pounds of product that is just subpar. What do you do at that point? You went to your manufacturer, you made all these adjustments, so you know that the new formulation will actually hopefully be closer to what you're looking for. But then what do you do with all of this product that you had produced? Is that just wasted? Does that just gets thrown out?
Yeah, so interesting. I didn't want to waste it, right? Because I'd already prepaid for this run. I mean, that product is paid for. Throwing it in the trash just didn't make sense to me. So thankfully, my food science group, they also have a consumer research arm to their company where they can touch about 500 to 1,000 consumers in a given time for taste testing and product feedback and analysis and things like that. So what I wanted to do is, the product wasn't bad, like it's edible, right? It just wasn't where I wanted it to be. So it wasn't good enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like, I wasn't going to buy it if it wasn't my product. But I also wanted to validate that what I was thinking was correct, right? Because I don't have anybody to help me validate that. I have business partners, and I have family and friends, but family and friends don't always tell you the truth. They're going to tell you it's great because they want to encourage you, right? Mm-hmm. So I also wanted to validate my thinking on where I wanted the product to be. So I took all that product, we put it in bags, and I shipped it to the food science group, to their consumer research arm. And, within 3 weeks, they had me scheduled to do 1,000-person taste test with that product.
Wow.
And I wanted, we lined up all the questions that I wanted asked, that I was thinking about the product. And when we got the results back, it validated my thinking of where we were at. So, it's one of those things where as a founder, you get so tunnel visioned with your product because it's yours and, you want it to be good for you. But at the end of the day, it's also got to be good for the consumer. So being able to use that, what I thought was bad product, and use it and give it to consumers to try to validate, where I was thinking and where I saw the product heading, was huge because then it helped me realize that I made the right choice.
What a great story in being adaptable and talk about turning lemons into lemonade. I mean, taking that and using it to derive insights that can then push your business forward in a way that you might not have been able to do before. It's inspirational. It's awesome to hear.
Yeah, I knew I could have sold it. I didn't want to sell it, so I had to find another way to use it. And I thought that was the best opportunity is get the people who will be buying it to give feedback on that product and help validate our thesis going forward on where we want the product to be.
So when you sent this to your partners to then put out to these this taste testing group, are these people who you then have a touch point with down the line, or they're only used for this one sampling trial and then you don't get to talk to them again?
Yeah, so the way that they build out their survey groups is random, so we don't get any data from that.
Mm,
But we can always go back to them and run more, and we did. So once we reformulated the product and reproduced the product, we sent it again, and we said, we want feedback on this product now, and find ways to make it better. And then we did. We made it better again. So really what's on the market today is the third iteration from where we started back in April of 2019. And that's one thing that we always want to continue to do, is we want to keep getting the product can always be better. So we think we have a really, really good product on the market right now. Our reviews tell us that, our customers tell us that every day, but we're still striving to make it even better.
mm. You mentioned earlier when we were speaking about, I asked you what was one piece of advice you'd want to give to people who are starting off in the food sector, and you said it was super important to own your product, the formulations, the recipes, the process, whatever proprietary tools you need to make it your own, as opposed to maybe having a third-party service white label it for you. What if you're just in a rush to get started, you need something, I'd love to hear more about your mindset on white labeling. Is this something that, somebody could consider doing before pivoting to their own formulation, or you think without a doubt you need to start with your own thing and that's always going to be the case?
Yeah, so I think the way I think about that, white labeling versus having your own is, if you white label, then you have to build a brand. If you don't white label and you build your own formulations, then your product helps build the brand. Does that make sense? So if you go to a bar manufacturer that's already making bars for 15 other companies, what's going to separate you from those 15 companies? It's going to be the brand.
Yep.
Right. So you have to be really good at brand building. You have to be really good at telling and building a message around that brand. But if you have a good product with a good brand, then that product should sell itself, and then in turn will build the brand.
Gotcha. So where can people find Macro Snacks right now? Are you going just direct to consumer, or are you also doing the retail route?
Yeah, right now we're direct to consumer, so you can find it on our website at snackmacro.com. We're also on amazon.com. And that's it for now. We are working on some retail expansion in 2021 that we're pretty excited about. Just don't have any news on those relationships yet. And yeah, we're just continuing to build and bring on some partners and hopefully get this thing going in the right direction.
Awesome, man. And how's it been with the pandemic so far? Have you had any operational issues as a result of it?
We did back in June. So we sold out in June from that second batch of run that we did, and our manufacturer was shut down. So we had like an 8-week gap where we were sold out of product before we could manufacture again. So we got product back in late August. We're just driving all that product out the door now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What else? Is there something that I don't know enough that I should have asked you? What else would you like to share with people about your journey, about Macro Snacks, about anything?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing that kind of, keeps me going every day is just, for some reason I have the will never to give up. Like I should have given up multiple times in this thing. And one thing about being a founder and starting a company is just the ability to be resilient. If you wait long enough, things will turn in the right direction. If you work hard and think creatively and sort of keep going down the path will get good. And that's kind of where we're at now. It took a long time to get here, but we're excited for the future, and that's all it takes is a little bit of resilience and some good luck, and that's it.
Spoken like a true early stage founder. Grit and determination wins over all.
Every time.
Awesome. Well, Justin, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. It's an inspiring story. I think that people can really learn a lot about your ingenuity in pivoting and being able to take something that could have been a complete disaster and turning it into a win for you guys, the ability to get those insights and then use it to, not just prevent a huge loss of capital, but actually use it to, as business intelligence to figure out where to go next. It's inspiring. So I appreciate you sharing your story with us today, and best of luck with Macro Snacks. Oh, before you go, one other thing I wanted to ask of you. We've got Black Friday, Cyber Monday coming up in a couple weeks. Talk to me about your battle plan there. First of all, when did you start your preparations for that?
Yes, we started probably middle of October, early October, kind of planning out where we were going to go. We're taking a different direction. We're going to do a pre-Black Friday, which will be a bigger deal than our Black Friday. We kind of want to try to break through the noise of that week. So we're offering our customers some crazy incentives, and they actually start tomorrow. So it's going to be fun. Sent out some hype emails earlier this week and getting customers ready, and it's the biggest sale we've ever done. So we're excited for it. We're trying to keep our customers happy and engaged, and also try to drive some new acquisition.
Awesome. Great to hear. Well, as I mentioned, we really appreciate you joining us, and best of luck with that and beyond. And we're looking forward to speaking with you again soon.
Yeah, Jake, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time and listening to my story. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Pleasure. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.